Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this Black History Month panel. And so we have amazing panelists ready to speak to you all. And I really hope you will enjoy this discussion themed about next steps. And so before we start, I would like to invite you all to leave comments and questions, as there will be a period dedicated for it at the end. So, first of all, I would like to present myself. My name is Mowahib. I also go by Mo. I use she, her pronouns, and I am located on the unceded territories of the Mohawk, also known as Chochake and Montreal. And so I am a coordinator of the Canada We Want bucket at the Students' Commission of Canada, and I also have a really strong passion for social justice. And so I will be moderating this discussion with Marwa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marwa
We
Doualeh.
can
We can hear me? Perfect. Okay, so my name is Marwa Doualeh. I am 25. I'm also the sister of Mowahib. I go by she, her. I'm also on the unceded territories of the Mohawk in Montreal. A political science major, and I'm also a member of the Nobody's Born a Racist workshop. So first, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we all call home in Canada. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationship between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people that call this nation home.
Thank you, Marwa. And so I would also like to say a little word about Black History Month. And so, as you may all know, Black History Month started a couple of days ago, and I think it is important to address it as it is in the name of this panel. And so, during Black History Month, I would like for allies to pause and reflect on their own biases, stereotypes, gaps in knowledge, and uplift Black folks, whether it is by supporting their businesses, their initiatives, and making space for them. And so mitigating anti Black racism cannot be done in a month. But I hope February can be a stepping stone for this important work that needs to be done every day of the year. Black history is also collective and present history. And so, as I have mentioned again, participate in Black history activities both virtually and in person in the future. Make a concerted effort to learn more about history and how it has affected the Black community. Through businesses, groups, and activities, engage, donate, and assist the Black community. Don't only do something in February, study and act throughout the year.
Yes. So a bit about the Nobody's Born a Racist project. It's a speaker series that is a 12-month project that engaged over 600 Canadian youth aged from 12 to 29 in a national movement to combat systemic racism. Youth will work with experts, share their experience dealing with racism, act, and provide recommendations to decision makers. The innovative speaker series will engage Canadian youth from coast to coast to coast in a 360 educational opportunity to fully immerse themselves in the importance of anti-racism education, addressing structural inequities in society, healing, and support for radicals community. The NBR Speaker Series will spotlight 12 influential figures that are academics, speakers, students, communication alumni, educators, youth, and organizational leaders that will lead several relevant conversations on racism.
Thank you, Marwa. And so I would like to introduce the first panelist, Tamar. Tamar is a mental health professional, educator, community advocate, and leader. As Kids Help Phone's manager of Black Youth Initiatives, they find energy in developing resources and spaces that feel powerful and safe, especially for members of the Afro diaspora, 2S LGBTQ plus community, and young people from across Canada. Their work revolves around teaching and crisis intervention centers, anti oppression, decolonization, and inclusion, and they remain firmly committed to these values in their personal life as well.
Welcome, Tamara. The second panelist will be Zahra. She is a second-year social science student at Cégep Champlain Tolerance in Quebec City. She's been involved with Student Commission of Canada for 3 years as a facilitator and contributed to projects ranging from sustainability to social identity formation. Zahra is passionate about anti-racism and sustainability and centers most of her work around youth empowerment in those two areas. As the president of the Intercultural Club at Champlain St. Lawrence, she leads numerous diversity and inclusion initiatives.
Welcome, Zahra. And then we have Kadane. Kadane is a certified child and youth care practitioner who has experience working with children, youth, and adults in community, residential, and healthcare settings. So these opportunities have provided her with teachings and personal experiences that contribute significantly to her relational practice, along with strong foundations in meaningful youth engagement and the four pillars, which are respect, listen, understand, and communicate.
And last and but not least is Jellisa. Jellisa is a teacher, athlete, and passionate about uplifting and empowering the Black community. She values education and wellness and strongly believes that access to education, support, and wellness tools are important to continue the advancement of the Black community. Moving along, we'll also be doing a giveaway. So before we start, I would like to inform attendees that they are welcome to leave comments and submit questions. There will be a giveaway amongst those who submitted questions and comments, and we'll give more details about it at the very end.
Thank you. And to get in the bulk of this discussion, the theme is about next step. And so, acknowledging that there has been a recent awakening concerning the need to mitigate anti Black racism, this panel of amazing Black speakers will address next steps in addressing the systemic oppression faced by Black Canadians. And so, the panelists will inspire attendees to mobilize for change, addressing how education translates into genuine community action. Furthermore, they will explore how Black communities can continue in their journey towards healing and self care with the ongoing battle against systemic racism and discrimination.
So I'll start with the first panel question, which is I'd like to ask Zahara if you could answer the first question, and then we'll move along with the other panelists as well. So describe some of the work that you do and how it impacts your community. Why is this important? And décrivez le travail que vous faites et son impact sur votre communauté et pourquoi est-ce que c'est important.
D'accord. Merci pour la belle introduction. Donc, comme Marwa l'avait mentionné, je suis présentement présidente du club interculturel de mon cégep. J'étais également engagée avec la commission des étudiants pour travailler sur certaines initiatives concernant, par exemple, les espaces sécuritaires et la recherche sur la générativité. Donc, présentement, je me concentre en plus sur le club interculturel. J'ai été capable de travailler avec l'administration de mon propre cégep pour démarrer du vrai changement, pour finalement avoir une Inclusion Task Force, donc avoir un groupe de travail qui se focus réellement sur le problème qu'on a de discrimination et de racisme. Donc, à travers ce groupe, on était capable d'identifier certaines de nos priorités, comme avoir une vraie politique là, sur la diversité et inclusion, créer des systèmes de prise de responsabilité pour les employés de l'école qui commettent des actions qui vont pas nécessairement avec les valeurs de l'école, mais également pouvoir donner une voix aux étudiants pour dire qu'est-ce que eux, ils expérimentent réellement à l'école, puis pour, bien sûr, la sensibilisation auprès du corps étudiant sur toutes les questions identitaires et sur tous les problèmes qui touchent les minorités marginalisées du corps étudiant. En tant qu'étudiant du CELB de Saint-Laurent, je peux vous dire qu'on n'a pas énormément de personnes de couleur, puis c'était vraiment important pour nous de finalement donner une voix à ces groupes, de finalement faire entendre nos problèmes et pour vraiment créer ce changement dont on va tous bénéficier.
Thank you, Zahra. I completely agree with you. And I think the work you're doing is really great because St. Lawrence really need this. So it's great that you were doing the work. Tamara, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's so great to see the amazing panelists here. So my name is Tamar Brannigan. I am Kids Help Phone's manager of Black Youth Initiatives, which is a program that's been generously supported by the Slate Family Foundation. And it's a relatively new program at Kids Help Phone. So in May of 2020, on May 25th, when George Floyd was murdered, there was a lot of stuff happening in the Black community. We know that COVID was disproportionately impacting Black individuals, Black communities, of course, having a big impact on mental health. And then we had this massive loss in our community. And Kids Help Phone is an organization that's been around for 30 plus years supporting youth mental health. But we realized that there was a disparity in the number of Black youth who were reaching out to us. And so we wanted to investigate why that was happening and really drill down our focus into supporting this community. So we actually worked with the Students' Commission of Canada. And we were able to connect with about 200 Black youth from across the country and figure out what's going on, like what kind of barriers do Black youth face when they reach out for support, and what are their needs. And so kind of based off of that, this Rise Up program was born. And we want to make sure that when Black youth reach out for support, for mental health and wellness support, they're able to receive it in a way that feels resonant, that feels culturally safe, and that is led by and informed by Black youth and Black community. So right now, I guess one of the really cool things is that Black youth can reach out anytime, 24/7, for free, and connect with a crisis responder by texting RISE to 686868 on their phone. Of course, adults are able to do the same at the short code 741741. But really, the idea is that we wanted to make sure that mental health supports was super accessible across Canada to young people, that it's free, but that most of all, that it's a safe space for them to reach out.
Thank you so much. I love that you talked about the safe space. Personally, I think it's important that it is accessible, but youth go with it with a lot of vulnerability. So it's important to have a good quality as well of, just access. So really interesting. Thank you.
And if I can add on that, I really wanted to thank you again, Tamar. I've been facilitating some of these discussions for Rise Up over the summer, and I noticed how participants thought that there had to be a conversation about mental health within the Black community and how we can make sure that those services are tailored to us. And so that is really important work that you're doing, and I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It's amazing to see the way that community has kind of come together to make it what it is. It's still in its early days, which is one of the most exciting things about the project because there's so much opportunity for it to go in different directions. But the most important thing is that it is Black community that's leading the direction in a number of different ways, because we know that there's a lot of we know that a lot of the work of mental health, of wellness, just the medical industrial system is very driven by Western health and by whiteness. And there's a lot of violence that can happen in those systems when it's not led by community. So it's really important that it's youth who are driving it, Black community that's driving it. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Kadane, would you like to answer?
Sure, thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Kadane Headley. I'm in Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Métis Nations in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It's really amazing to be on this panel. We got the question sent out earlier, and I was going over this one because I'm like, most of the work I've been doing over the last couple of years has been on a mom level. I was doing a lot of volunteering in the community. There's a few organizations that work with newcomer and immigrant youth. So I myself am an immigrant to Canada. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago and came here when I was 7. So that's something I'm really passionate about. So that's looked different in the last couple of years with COVID and just becoming a mom. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old myself. So I think a lot of the work that I've been doing has just been advocating for like awareness around Black Lives Matter, especially since George Floyd's death. Like I myself have just growing up in Saskatoon, there's a small Black community and there's been things that have like torn that community apart over the years. But on a few notes that have been mentioned, like we have a Black Lives Movement in Saskatoon. It was started by a group of young people, so super fortunate for that. They organized a rally for Black Lives Matter, and I I took my daughter to it, and so that sparked a whole new interest for her, right? Along with like the same time she was having dreams of like bad things happening and her being chased by the police just because of things that were in the news and social media in different places. So a lot of the work that I've been doing has been around educating myself so that I'm able to, for my kids, the young people in my lives, the young people I work with, and my friends, their young children, to just advocate and educate on Black history in Canada and different things like that. So it looks a little different, but all the work that all of you guys are doing is supporting that and just trying to be a role model. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think it's really interesting, and your work is just as important, given that your kids are the future as well, and we'll have to live in the society in this world that we live in. So, teaching them and learning with them is just as important. So I think it's really great. Thank you so much. Jellisa?
Yes, hi. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. It's such an honor to be with such an incredible lineup of women doing amazing things in the community. And just to go off of what you said, Kadane, I believe, as a parent with kids, and I'm a new teacher, as a new educator, I could absolutely just affirm that what you're doing is very much needed. We need our youth and students to get that type of knowledge and support from the home as well. That's where it starts. And so that's great to hear that you're doing that for your daughters too. And it impacts their experience in the classroom all the same. So that's great. But I am I am a recently, I wouldn't say retired, but an athlete on hiatus, a national team athlete for Team Canada. I was a bronze medalist at the 2015 Pan Am Games here in Toronto, and have been training with Team Canada ever since. I just took a year off just to begin building my career in education. So I am a new teacher. Gearing towards my full certification next fall, hopefully. But over the past few years, I have tried to find ways to get involved in community advocacy work. And I was working with an organization called Positive Vibes TO for the past few years as their social outreach coordinator. And through that, I was able to host a number of panel discussions actually at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020. And the timing of it was really important because I honestly just wanted to host conversations around mental health in the Black community and how it's perceived, and tips from people who do it well, and sharing those type of that knowledge with people. And so I hosted a local, she's a playwright and a social worker, Dr. Elaine Spencer. I hosted Dr. Joseph Smith, who is the CEO and founder of Generation Chosen, that works with Black youth in Jane and Finch area. We talked about coping with, at the moment that he got on, it was maybe like a day or two after the George Floyd incident happened. So we got to really dismantle that and give people just a little more insight onto what was happening and how it was a manifestation of systemic racism. So that was a really cool conversation. And a few other leaders in the Black community came on our panel, and it was just really impactful for people to learn from them. And as a teacher, I get a unique position to help kids directly. I work with Timbuktu. It's an after-school program that works to support BIPOC and racialized youth in school. And so just being able to provide students with learning support that they just otherwise wouldn't get or maybe couldn't afford is really special, because that is one of the biggest things that Black youth can benefit from right now. Having to learn online and having many different struggles with access and all of that. So just being like a tutoring service that supports them in those ways has been really impactful as well. And I had the opportunity to lead a panel discussion, or help lead a panel discussion through Classroom Champions to discuss mental health barriers in Black youth in the classroom as well, last a few months ago. So I've just been trying to use the voice that I have in whatever position I find myself to speak actively on these things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jellisa.
Thank you so much, you all, for answering this first question. And I just wanted to thank you again for all the work that you're doing. It's really valid work. And so, my next question is about self care and advocacy. I feel like a lot of Black youth and even adults, there has been a higher demand for the type of work that you are all doing. And sometimes it's hard to do this type of activism and taking care of yourself. And so, my next question was, how do you balance self care and advocacy? In French, which is comment faites-vous pour balancer votre activisme et prendre soin de vous-même? And so anyone who's ready to go first can go first.
I'll go first. I think so. Over the past year, I was a store manager at a store called the Running Room, and I was able to help initiate the diversity and inclusion committee to help change, I guess, some of our training manual needed to be updated, and other experiences that I've had as a Black person working there were not really, there wasn't really like a structure for how to handle or how to respond to those things. And so I often, especially in 2020, when people were becoming more audacious with what they would ask me about and feeling that they were entitled to spark up a conversation about Black history and slavery when I was really just trying to sell them some shoes. And so I often found customers crossing lines and boundaries and stuff. And so, but there was no structure in place to say, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable right now. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I tell my staff that this was an incident that just happened and this is not okay, and this is how we need to handle it as a business. And so those are the type of things that I kind of left with the diversity and inclusion team to work through. And I think that the biggest thing I noticed was just knowing when to disengage and knowing to set your limits and boundaries on conversation with a hard stop. Um, I had to put some customers in place and say, listen, I am here to sell you some shoes, not here to tell you my perception on Black Lives Matter and explain to you on the phone that it's not okay to ask somebody by the sound of their name if, are you one of those people that the police hate and want to kill? Like, that's never okay. You know what I mean? And so, setting boundaries in conversations with people and knowing that checking in with myself afterwards and reaching out to people who are in higher authority than me and saying, listen, this was an incident in the store and we have nothing in place to report something like this, you know? But that's been huge. It's just knowing your boundaries and when to just put a hard stop in a conversation and say, I'm not here for this today, you know?
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's really valid. Like, I feel like a lot of Black people have experiences, instances where people overstep those boundaries and feel comfortable asking questions that they should not necessarily be asking. And yeah, pushing them to also look for that information themselves, educate themselves. And so it's good that you've done like some structural work to change that at the Running Room. So thank you very much. Um, Kadane, would you be ready to go next?
Sure. I think part of my self care has been doing some of the advocacy work, like just learning myself and finding ways to understand things that I had not really put as much thought into or just hadn't come up for myself. So it's kind of dip into one bucket and fill up the other bucket. But I think, yeah, like Jellisa said, setting boundaries and being firm and just being able to if it's not today, I'm not going to answer those questions or do that work today. And even having to redirect people seems like work, but it's really important. And I think as a mom too, wanting to teach my daughter those same boundaries. We have this book, it's called Don't Touch My Hair. And it's about that, right? Just, it's okay. Just say it. You don't even have to be nice about it. It's your space and to, yeah, really take ownership of that. So, I And then like finding authors and music and people in the Black community, like things that bring joy, and social media has been really good for me that way. I live in Saskatoon. It's like small community, but I found so many amazing people, like, doing so much work that, yeah, so that's been nice too. I went through a phase of like just deleting all these random white people I follow on Instagram, and like, no, like finding these wonderful, amazing Black people that I didn't even know were there doing this work. And then I was like, oh, but it was a good feeling, and it was something that, I just did for me, and yeah, good things.
That's a good thing. And I think a lot of us probably did the same during like the George Floyd protest. Like it was just exhausting to see some people on social media that were probably not rooting for us or advocating for us. And so I think, yeah, it is important work that has to be done. Also, like surrounding yourself with people from your community who are energizing you. And so thank you, Kadane, for that. And Tamar, if you're ready to go next.
Definitely. I think one of the privileges and honors in my life is that the work that I do professionally is based around advocacy work and community work, and it's very care-based. And so I feel very lucky to do that. And in addition, it can be really challenging to do self-care when things that you're passionate about and the work that you love doing, even in your personal life, also overlap with what you do for work. And so I'm somebody who absolutely loves resources. I love to find them, read them, share them. If you look at my social media, it is basically all just like scrolling away just a brilliance of community and trying to share that, and that brings me a lot of joy. But what I learned over time, and as I've gotten maybe a tiny bit older and wiser, is that it's not actually self-care to constantly be working and constantly be engaging, especially in things that really like impact your life and your humanity. When you're always dealing with anti-Black racism or homophobia or transphobia, and that's your passion work. You have to find other things outside of that, and some of my history has been doing kind of typical activism work, going to rallies, going to protests, and I think that is. That's one type of way of doing advocacy. But what I've really leaned into is finding ways to do that work that also like honors my need to rest. And so I think really valuing the time that I get to spend creating joy with my friends, building community, publicly saying, no, I'm taking a break from this. I think that's a form of advocacy too. And that also really overlaps with my self care. So just this weekend, even, I had a really busy week. Last week. And so this weekend, I just played Pokemon on Nintendo Switch all weekend. And it's hard, I'm sure, for many of us that need to be busy and to keep going and to keep being strong and resilient and kind of embodying all of those values that I know that exist within Black community, kind of allowing myself to just kick back and not be working and not be producing and not be productive necessarily is just a really important form of self-care for me. So yeah, having boundaries and barriers and knowing how to say no, but also knowing how to value myself outside of just my work, even though I love my work.
That's a really good point. I like your point that you brought about the overlap of advocacy and self care, and I think it's also important to like mention that people always expect for us Black people to do the work and be the loudest one and advocate all the time. And it's true that we deserve to rest. We deserve to like have time for ourselves and be with the ones that we love. And so that was a really good point. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll pass it on to Zahra.
Thank you. I really resonated with what all of the other speakers said because those are all things that I've also experienced. So, because a lot of my current work is focused in my CEGEPs and my school, we often have teachers who have the audacity to say certain things, and especially because of that power dynamic, it is hard for students to speak up or to even know if there is like some person they could go to share their experiences. And that's something that like as a part of the intercultural club, as the president, I was usually the one getting those comments and getting students come to me, or even myself experiencing those things a bit too often. And so that's like a part of, I guess you could say, my self care is when I decided to just work with the administration to build a proper complaint system so that we don't have, we the students do not have to deal with all of this on a daily basis, to be our peers' therapists, to be their counselors, to be the one who are supposed to solve the situation, even though it is definitely something that we want to be a part of. Um, on top of this, setting boundaries, it is extremely hard for me to do so, although I'm getting better at it. Because I find it essential to give myself time off, to set aside some time dedicated to doing things that like give me peace and make me feel more aligned with myself. Because if I do neglect myself, that's when I'm not able to really like show up and be the best version of myself when I do want to work. And my main objective is just to avoid overthinking and just because it's to me it's a slippery slope towards burnout. And on top of this, surrounding myself with people who do energize me rather than people who drain me. Um, and those people who maybe I don't know, maybe bringing up problems should also bring up those solutions, so that we can really work together and we share a similar outlook. So that when I do tell them, hey, this week I might just take some time off and focus on myself, they understand that, and we can just find a nice balance. And I've also found it very helpful, especially in the summer of 2020, to curate my social media feed. Like I just decided that I did not need to witness black trauma on a daily basis. That this those images were very triggering to me, and I just made the decision to unfollow certain people, to follow some more, and to maybe just put my phone somewhere and not touch it for a few hours. And this also links back to something that the other speaker said about setting boundaries, but also practicing joy within my work has been something that I've been trying to put more emphasis on, to find those moments just for myself, or also with my team. I guess an example that I could use is with the intercultural club. We really value like those team building activities that we do together. So when we are organizing activities to raise awareness within the student body, we're also organizing like alongside just activities that bring us joy. So when we did build that exhibit that we called "I'm Not Racist But," where students were invited to share all the things that were said to them, but were preceded with a "I'm not racist but," you know, all those instances where people had the indecency to say outrageous comments to them or to be just overtly racist. We decided that while we had that exhibit up, we would also take over the stage of the school's radio, and we for 3 hours we took over and we played music from all of the respective countries of origin, so that we had that balance.
Thank you, Zahra. And if I can add, so Zahra is currently like the president of the Intercultural Club, and it's a club that I had founded with a few friends of mine before at the school because there wasn't this space at the school. It was like very predominantly white school where you obviously have a lot of racist encounters, and so we created that safe space, and it's really nice to see that it has been carried and that obviously like Zahra and the others like really had um, a lot of barriers to the exhibit that they're doing, but at least they could rely back on themselves and enjoy the work that they were doing. Like she would come back to me and say, "Oh, this person said this thing," and it was literally horrible, but they were all like finding ways to tackle this issue together. And so I found that they managed to really energize themselves through the work that they were doing, and it connects again to what you all have mentioned.
Mhm. Because like you said, this is something that you started, but we want this to keep going in the future. So we think resiliency is key. We want to build sustainable habits so that the change we make uh, eventually happens and keeps going down the line, so that it's long term.
Thank you all so much. You're all doing incredible work, and I'm taking notes of all this self care thing that you guys said, especially the boundaries. We're all working on it. So the next question is, given especially the recent event of the pandemic, namely the BLM movement, what are best practices for healing? Compte tenu notamment de l'événement récent de la pandémie, à savoir le mouvement BLM, quelles sont les meilleures pratiques pour guérir? So whoever, has a answer first.
I'm happy to just jump in. One of the things that kind of stood out to me in my work, and just I know this, and I think this will resonate with folks. It's really hard to ask for help. It is, at the best of times, we want to appear like our lives are perfect, or that like we're unrattled, and it's really tough to be vulnerable. But it's so important to reach out and ask for support when you need it. And in times of crisis, like we have seen over COVID, and like we see in these, the murder of George Floyd, had such a huge impact, but we see violence and tragedies like that so frequently. It's not something that's uncommon, especially within our Black communities. And so I think being able to acknowledge that grief and talk about that grief and open up and share that with other people, the opportunity to receive support is so important, but also other people being asked and being trusted to be a support, I think is also a really healing community interaction. I know that when I've had friends or community members who have like come to me and said like, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or can I open up to you about this? I hope that like the experience was helpful for them, but it also means so much to me as a person who's able to give support. So that's the first thing. But just like Zahra was sharing, I think seeking out those opportunities for joy is like, that means everything. It's easy to focus on the tough things, especially when there's so much happening in our society, starting and previous to 2020, but also, coming to now in the present. Being intentional and rigorous about just finding your joy, carving out spaces for your own peace, is really important, and doing it with community. Like we have to be interdependent. We cannot get free until everyone's free, and that means we go together. So I think, asking for help, finding joy, and like doing it with your community, your family, your chosen family, whatever that looks like. I think that's the way that we get out of this together and whole.
Can I just say I love that. I love that so much, and that was exactly what came to mind as well, was joy and community. Because I remember in the summer of 2020 when everything was happening, it was so heavy, and people didn't know what to do with that information. You're processing, you're trying to cope with all these images, like Zahra, you said we were seeing on social media, and it was too much grief and trauma for people to just be having on their phones as a casual thing. And by the time Black History Month rolled around in 2021, I was tired. I don't know about you guys. I was tired. I'm like, I can't think about slavery now. Like, come on, I gotta think about something happy about that Black experience in history, and in our present as well. And so, and on top of that, as an athlete transitioning, trying to figure if I wanted to continue my sport, I had my own kind of turbulence that I was going through. And by the summer of 2021, I just needed adventure. I just needed joy. I was craving it. And that's when I had discovered, oh my goodness. I should have got the name of this group, but it was a group where they bring Black women out to experience nature and like adventure out in like wilderness type of thing. And so that summer I did flat water surfing at Cherry Beach at like 8 a.m. in the morning. It was raining, it was freezing, and it was with a bunch of Black women, and we all had our head ties on, and like none of us knew what we were doing. And that was the highlight of my entire year. And that was the happiest I had felt in quite a long time. And I was like, no, whatever this is, I need to do more of this because this is important work that they're doing, and it's community and it's joy, and it's Black women, people who look like me doing something that we don't usually see people doing. It was like we had permission to be in this space, and it was so healing. And I just really commend the girl who's doing that work with that group, because it was just such a unique experience, and we all were just feeding off each other's energy. And I think that a lot of people, or people in a majority race, they can have access to being around people who look like them anywhere that they go. But when you're a minority, when you're a visible minority, you have to be intentional about being around people who look like you, because sometimes you need to tap in and see that. In the same way, I like to think like children like need to be around other children. It's for their development, it's for their well-being. And women need to be around women, men need to be around men, Black people need to be around other Black people sometimes, because it helps us, it's healing, and it's important to see people who look like you just doing life with you. So yeah, I piggyback off of that from Tamar. uh, Community and joy is huge for navigating this moment.
Thank you so much, Jellisa. I completely agree with you. I think especially 2020 was, I think, the most overwhelming year. It's just so overwhelming with not just COVID, but especially BLM movement. I know personally, like, social media was so hard to be on. And what I did was also a lot of cleansing, seeing people that I knew that never really cared about racism, and then suddenly, doing all those little Instagram stories and acting like, suddenly they care, and how heartbreaking it is to, like, wow, you didn't care for years and now you're doing this. So, it was a lot of cleansing, and wanting to be with my own community, people that actually really understood on a deep level without having to explain everything. There was a lot of, people coming to me as if I was Google for a lot of things, because suddenly they wanted answers. That was hard as well. And, happened a lot before, but especially with the BLM movement during that year, it was a lot. And, having to cut that and be like, I'm not gonna explain why we need to be seen as humans to you. So, maybe not do that. So I totally agree with both of you guys. Really interesting. Zahra, would you like to speak?
I really connect with what you both have said, the need for community and for joy. Donc je peux vraiment comme me voir dans qu'est-ce que vous avez dit, dans le besoin d'avoir une communauté, d'être avec sa communauté, mais également de la joie d'être comme heureux en communauté. I guess part of my experience was that in summer 2020, the Students' Commission did what was called a soul circle. And to me, that evening um, was potentially like the start of that healing process. Donc, dans l'été 2020, la commission des étudiants ont fait qu'est-ce qui a été appelé un cercle comme de l'âme. Donc, pour moi, c'était vraiment le début de mon processus de guérison. Because it was one of the first times for me where I was able to really gather with other Black people from everywhere across Canada, and to see that we all had very similar experiences. We had similar challenges, and it was very healing to know that I was in a safe space where people understood each other. Donc pour moi, c'était une des premières fois que j'étais dans un espace avec d'autres personnes noires de partout à travers le Canada, et qu'on avait la chance de voir comment on avait des difficultés similaires, on avait des expériences similaires, puis je pouvais vraiment comme me voir dans chacun d'entre nous. One other thing that I might add, another example, is that just a few days ago was the anniversary for the 5th year of the attack on a mosque that was
Mm.
city where I'm from, that was in my community. Donc il y a juste un autre exemple que je vais mentionner, c'est qu'il y a quelques jours, il y avait l'anniversaire des 5 ans de l'attentat à la mosquée à Québec, d'où je suis basée, c'est ma communauté, c'est là que j'ai grandi. So at the time of the attack, of the terrorist attack, I was 14. On me and this event took a toll on me and all of my friends. I can say that the community has started to heal But that's when I noticed that I needed my community more than ever. Euh, à- quand l'attentat a eu lieu, j'avais 14 ans. Puis ça a vraiment eu un effet considérable sur moi et sur toutes mes amies, sur la communauté. On a commencé à guérir, mais comme on va jamais être comme avant. Puis I can say that being able to gather as a community to have to be with one another, because that's when I noticed that our community wasn't necessarily our space, because that space that for us symbolized peace, it was where we grew up, where we were taught the basic principles of love, understanding, um, was suddenly attacked. And yeah, it was very, very necessary for us to have one another and to be able to gather. And yeah, that having that space and those opportunities was essential for us and for our own healing.
Thank you so much, Zahra. Everything you said, completely agree, especially with what happened. Kidding?
Just echo all of the above. Yeah, community and joy. And I think, like Zahra had said, like I know before all of, like, the last few years, my bubble was so small, but with social media and different things, it's so easy now to network and reach out and find people and connect and network. So yeah, I think definitely reaching out and making space, and yeah, making time.
Thank you all.
And I guess heals in their own way, in their own time. So it'll look different for everybody, but just, yeah, being there and being open to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like healing is a process. I think it was during the other panel that has been mentioned, like healing is a process and not necessarily like the end goal. Like it's a long term thing, and obviously there might always be a scar, but at least it allows us to remember. And I think that's really important in that case. And also, like I feel like we have often brought up like a bit like performative allyship that we've noticed during the BLM protest. So it's a bit off topic, but I was kind of like wondering how would you all deal with having people in your circles that you see really being active on social media, but not necessarily doing the work, because that's something that I often struggle with, and also a lot of youth struggle with, how to address this performative activism that we often see in our generation. Anyone has anything to add on that? Obviously, I just felt like asking it now.
Mm-hmm. I feel like like shortly after everything happened, there was almost this expectation. It's like we were watching to see who's going to put the black square,
Yeah.
And it was easy to judge people for what they did or didn't do on their social media. That was kind of what people used as the standard, like how active are you? How much do you actually care? But I feel like a year, 2 years out, you start to see, like you said, who's really getting involved and who actually wants to make longer or lasting change. And I personally started to feel that, you know what, policing people and what they do and their advocacy is work that I don't need to do. That's a boundary there. I need to cut that off because I can't sit around and judge people. Oh, are you for me? Or are you against me? If you're for me, you're for me, and you can come and ask me questions. We can engage. But I can't sit and wait and expect you to involve yourself in a cause because that's exhausting. There's actual work that I need to do for my community, and I think it's important to pick your battles and also figure what are you most passionate about. Do you want to be that person who's engaging with allies and trying to bridge the gap and have the awkward conversations and uncomfortable conversations about race and white supremacy? And some people don't have energy for that. Some people are like, no, I just need to pour into my community. I need to help the people that look like me because there's a need here. And so I think it's important to have your boundaries and stuff and like know where you're willing to put out your energy and know where you need to just step away and like let things happen as they do. Because I mean, your peace, your mental health is the most important. and over policing people's advocacy work can be very draining. And I don't
Mhm.
think that's our job.
That's a really good point. And I think that's maybe also a reason why we were so drained during that social media activism, because I feel like most of the attention was on this company did not speak up, this person did not share this story, this person is like really is racist, whatever. And so most of the energy or like platforms were like a lot of platforms were just all about like outing people who were not allies rather than empowering us and being there for us. And so maybe I think maybe that's why I was personally drained of just opening Instagram and always seeing the same stuff. And so that's a really good point. Thank you, Jalissa.
Absolutely. I remember sometimes I, open Twitter and see Burger King does not condemn racism. And it's like, come on, Burger King. It really went. And I would even add sometimes I think it was really draining to having to filter like or see people's intention. Because even if someone has good intention, like it's okay to accept the fact that they're still are doing harmful actions. Like I know someone that I was friends with who sent me $30. She was like, have you eaten today? And I just sent me $30 during the Billabo when it was at its peak, and it was a bit of a wake up call because her own family said the N word to me, and it's like you're clearly trying to help, but yeah, I'd rather you talk to your family and set them straight than send me $30 for my Uber Eats. So it's just to show like sometimes even if people with certain intention it's not enough. It's just not enough, and you have to like cut that out because you feel sometimes some type of guilt and be like, oh, like I can see that they're trying, but you also have to kind of respect yourself and your boundaries, as was mentioned, and be like, even if it's not enough, and you gotta save yourself the trouble sometimes, and a lot of that happened during the peak of BLM in 2020. So it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. That's to me, that's so crazy. That's so crazy. And like, I had a similar thing where people were coming out and apologizing, like people I hadn't talked to for years. Elementary school friend with this everlasting apology. It's like, girl, I know you. What are you doing? But like you said, like you can't monitor people's intentions and try to figure it out and do all this extra work. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's that white guilt. Use that white guilt to actually make meaningful change. I
Right.
would say because having people like I had instances where like, I remember like we're just watching documentaries like about slavery, like just people watching me like feeling so bad, like I am so sorry. I'm like, why are you apologizing to me? Like just do actual change right now when you see it, especially when it comes to youth, like you like allies, you all are in circles that we're not always in, so use that strength to really engage and speak for us instead of just relaying back to us after. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add on that.
I just wanted to quickly talk about that. So first, I've seen a lot of people fall victim to that aesthetic Instagram infographic industrial complex because it was everywhere. But just to relate it to something that was said earlier, I just felt like it wasn't my place to just police people's intentions and to just be expected to be that one black person who makes sure that everybody has the right intentions and that they're all doing the right thing and advocating the right way. Because at the end of the day, if they want to share a pretty infographic, they'll do it. If they want to repeat the same definition of white supremacy and post it all over their stories, all right, at least some people are going to see that information. Um, but that's not what I wanted to just all of my energy into.
I want to jump in and say too, I think, it's hard when everyone's in their own learning journey, right? And people fall in different places along that spectrum. And it's really hard when you are a part, even inadvertently, of somebody's learning, right? And it can often feel like you're receiving kind of the brunt of it, their mistakes, their missteps, their, good intentions, but maybe the impact of it impacts you, right? And so I think that's where boundaries is really important, rather than constantly feeling the need to engage, saying like, this person is in this space in their life, and that's not the space that I need to be in right now. But I also find, there's a lot of ways that activism works and advocacy works. And, a lot of my friends come from disability community, and the ways that they're able to engage with activism and advocacy might not necessarily be going out there and being present in person, because we absolutely know that a lot of the ways that action happens are not accessible. And so the ways that people are able to engage sometimes are online. And I think that's super valid. And so for me, I think being very aware of what my own needs are in a moment, and being able to say, this is for me and this is not, and really choosing where I'm going to show up and where I'm going to give my energy is important, because I think there's lots of valid ways that people do their work that may not be the way that I'm doing it, but are still really important.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's true that we need to acknowledge that there are different ways to get involved. Like, for example, like I myself, like unconsciously, I would doubt some people and be like, are they actually like, do they care about what's happening right now? But if I would just ask, they would be like, I'm signing petitions. I'm like, they're doing their work background. It's just that on social media, it's like that the outward way of seeing it, and it's just more public. And so, yeah, we need to be conscious that some people are doing the work more discreetly than that. And I would go with the next question, which again goes sort of with allyship, which is, what advice can you give to allies who want to take action or don't know where to start? Et donc, quel conseil pouvez-vous donner aux alliés qui veulent agir mais ne savent pas par où commencer? That's a loaded one.
I can jump in.
I was gonna say, Tamar, you look like you got something to say.
Well, I guess just to kind of like flow off of what I just shared, I think if I could tell allies anything, that if they are in their learning journey, they don't have to be the ones who take up the space. They don't need to be the ones, sharing and expressing and potentially projecting. There is so much incredible creative work, research work, informative work done by Black community, where they can do that learning, but they can kind of do it offline, so they're not taking up a lot of space. Reading books, like fiction and nonfiction by Black writers, listening to podcasts, reading research articles, researching organizations and individuals who are doing work in community. I think getting really, really personally informed, or even just sharing resources or amplifying voices is really important, but it doesn't always need to be an ally's personal take on a situation or an event or a topic. They can amplify and they can learn, but they can also kind of stand back and give space to other folks. That would be my advice.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a good point. Again, sometimes the white guilt makes it that some people want to do as much as they can, and they end up taking space that could have been dedicated to Black people and experts on the issue. And so that's a really valid point. I don't know if Kadane, you're ready to add on this question.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would just like add staying curious and, and respect that everybody is on their own journey. Like BIPOC people are still learning and figuring and sorting things out as well too. And so, yeah, I direct them to what Tamar said. There's so much information out there, so many resources, so many people that are sharing and doing that work already. So yeah, just to get creative and looking for resources and finding ways to advocate and be an ally.
I love that so much, that BIPOC people are still learning too. Like, there's parts of our experience that we don't even understand. I love that you touched on that, because we don't have all the answers. That's why it's offensive when you think that we do, and you come with us with your questions, and it's like, Google that, like, because I don't know. I can only speak for myself and what I have, the knowledge that I have acquired of my experience, because unfortunately this is not mainstream information. Like, it was so abnormal or like surreal when all of these things, when people started posting all these infographic things and all that, because this was things that I learned at the university level in my African American History 101 class at Michigan State. And it's like, and now you guys are just tossing this information around social media without any context. And so this is like, it's heavy information, and it's not easily accessible. So I don't think it's fair to assume that BIPOC people have all the answers, but there are people who are doing the work. And I loved the Blackout Tuesday thing, that moment that happened when people were encouraged to amplify melanated voices, to amplify and share resources of people who were leading their community in different ways. And there was just so many people who are already doing this work. And so there's no reason. What do we do? We got to research, just look it up, because there's people doing work, and they've been doing the work for a very long time, so yeah, that would be my advice to allies as well, is do your research, because we had to do it ourselves. And so it's your turn. Welcome to the other side, but research. Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you. And I agree. Sometimes people expect for us to hand it over to them. And for us, it's lived experiences. We don't have necessarily, like myself, I don't have theory down that I can write up to you that's digestible and easy to comprehend. Like, I have experiences that I lived, and not necessarily, like, I'm not necessarily interested in sharing them as well. And so that was a really good point, Jellisa. Zara, do you want to add on?
I would say, especially for the people who are maybe already a part of those organizations or already a part of certain community that is advocating and doing some activism, I would say take, yes, the time to educate yourself, but also to reflect. Donc, je dirais pour ceux qui font déjà partie d'organismes ou de groupes qui font de l'activisme, prenez, oui, le temps de vous éduquer, mais également de réfléchir. Because I've personally seen people who are part of certain groups who have been sharing information on Instagram, but who've said certain things that don't necessarily align with their values. So for them to look inside themselves and reflect on how they are interacting with that particular issue, reflect on how they may be perpetuating certain narratives. Donc, pour ma part, j'ai déjà vu des gens faire partie de certains groupes, partager de l'information sur Instagram, mais qu'ils ont par le passé dit des propos qui n'étaient pas nécessairement similaires avec les valeurs qu'ils prétendent partager. Donc, ce serait de prendre le temps de voir, de réfléchir comment est-ce qu'ils interagissent avec ces sujets, ces problèmes, puis est-ce qu'ils sont en train de perpétuer certains, disons, certains patterns, certain narratives. Mon français m'échappe un peu. Ouais. And especially linked to something Mowahib said earlier, as a youth coming from a relatively small community, we often get people come to us and say, oh, that person did that thing or said that thing. So instead of having allies come to me and tell me those things, why don't they react in the moment? Why aren't they actively anti-racist instead of simply not being racist or being passive about it? Donc moi, un peu relié à quelque chose que Mowahib avait dit plus tôt, venant d'une communauté assez petite où comme tout le monde se connaît un peu, j'ai souvent des gens qui viennent me voir puis qui me disent « Ah, telle personne a dit cette chose ou a fait une telle chose. » Donc, au lieu d'avoir des alliés qui viennent me dire ça, pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ne réagiraient pas eux-mêmes dans le moment? Pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ne seraient pas activement antiracistes au lieu de juste pas être racistes? Donc, ce serait vraiment d'avoir ce genre de proactivité qui serait nécessaire à mes yeux.
Yeah, thank you, Zahra. And obviously, like Zara and I and Marwa, we're sisters. We've had those conversations together, and it's like why are you coming up to me telling me that this person said this racist thing or this harmful thing? You were in that space, and as a white person, use your privilege. Use your privilege, because sometimes people are saying those things because I am not present as well. And so use your privilege for doing actually good and advocate for us even when we're not there. Coming with that information to me is not necessarily helpful. It can even be harmful for me. And so I think that was a really good point. And I also want to add my piece telling people who are here, um, don't think that Black people are one monolith group that all think the same. And so don't tokenize us. Don't assume that because you talk to that one person that thinks this on that issue, we all think the same. Understand that there's intersectionality, different experiences, obviously different opinions and views on a variety of issues. And so try to really tap in to different people, different Black people. We're not all the same. And so I think that's what I would add as well for that question.
Mm.
Completely. And also it's important to like I've had people that, by what you mentioned, like, telling you about something that someone else said, and the way that they bring it up, it's as if they're waiting for you to respond and say what they should have said. And so you're basically then coming up with a whole argument for a conversation that you were not even part of. And anyway, it's interesting. And also, yeah, we're not a monolithic group, but also I've had people come up to me and be like, so this Black person said that, what do you think? And it's like, well, good for them, but we're different, so please see us as different. But all of this is very interesting. We've talked about many topics during this panel, and I would like to know what would be one takeaway that you'd like folks to leave this panel with today, if someone has.
I would love to share that I think with a lot of, I mean, a part of this whole learning curve is just trying to figure out what to say, what not to say for allies, and for Black people knowing when to engage, when not to engage. And I think at the heart of the Black Lives Matter movement, as much as it's politicized and can be very polarizing for people, not knowing what to say, when to say, how to learn, what to do. At the heart of it, it's people just want to be treated as people, right? Like, I want to be seen and respected as a human. Like, this is my human experience as a Black person, but it's still a human one, And so, no, you don't have to talk about politics with me. We could talk about shoes today. No, we don't have to talk about that, my hair and how different it is and how do you get it. We could just talk about what did you do last summer, like just having real authentic relationships with people, I think is really at the heart of everything. And that Black people as a community are, when we say Black Lives Matter, it's Black Lives Matter too, that we are part of the global community, and that our rights and experiences and differences and that don't make us any less human than you. It makes us just as human as you, and that yes, our race matters. Yes, our differences should be acknowledged. But that's just what it means to be human, and we can share human experiences together. So don't feel stressed out when you see a Black person don't know what to say. Just start with, hey, just have a conversation. And yeah, treat people the way that you want to be treated, and that's respected and seen and heard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jellisa. Anyone else would like to share?
Well, I can jump in, and I guess what's so special about this evening and about these opportunities to just connect with other people who have similar experiences, but also very different experiences, right? Like these very unique experiences, is just that it's so healing to get to open up and to share. And so I really appreciate all of you today. And I also I appreciate this space. And to do just like a little bit of a plug, I would love for people to know that, you know, there are all, like, even if you feel really alone, even if you feel isolated, even if there's, stigma or fear or all these different things that come up that make it challenging to talk about mental health and wellness and racism and these tough things, there are people there who are ready to listen. And so I do want to encourage people, like, reach out, text into Kids Help Phone. Black youth can reach out using the keyword RISE, or for French, support in French, surmonter. Sorry, my French is terrible. But to 686868, it's free. Like, even if it's the middle of the night, if it's 4 a.m., if it's lunchtime at school, there'll be someone there who almost immediately responds and is ready to listen. So I just want folks to know that, like, these spaces and this kind of support is there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's so, I think mental health is such a delicate topic, especially in our community, that there's certain access for this is great. And, hopefully more and more people can use it. Kadane?
I think just on to what was shared today, to reach out and make use of our community network, ask questions, and find resources. Like, I'm always looking for the brown dolls and the books with brown characters and things like that. And they're out there. There's things out there that you can do to educate yourselves and the people in your lives, but resources that can be shared too. And yeah, I think just continuing to be hopeful and finding that joy, making that joy, whatever that looks like. But I think the community piece is huge, and that, like, now I have some more wonderful people to add to my circle. That feels good. And yeah, we had our soul circle. I've been thinking lately, I'm like, we need another one. I'm like, am I feeling that way because it's Black History Month or what's happening, right? But it was such an amazing, powerful experience, and it was a good thing. So, like, soul circles all around for everybody. And yeah, I just thank you as well for inviting me to be part of this. I saw the lineup. I'm like, should I be in here or should I be on the other side listening? But it was a really great experience. And so, yeah, I think, like, taking opportunities to connect and share our experiences would be a big takeaway, because yeah, it's culturally across, like, the African Black diaspora, it's something that's kind of like, you keep to yourself. So being open to this new way of healing and sharing, and, like, I guess traditionally probably it happened anyway because we were in our safe small communities. So, like, figuring out what this new bigger community looks like and accessing that space. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Pour ma part, je dirais que une remarque que j'aimerais que les gens se rappellent après aujourd'hui, c'est que oui, le mouvement Black Lives Matter, c'est un mouvement qui peut être considéré pour la justice, mais c'est également un mouvement humain. Qu'après tout, on est juste des personnes qui militent pour être reconnues en tant que personnes, mais qu'on est plus que juste un mouvement, qu'on est plus que juste la couleur de notre peau, qu'on est plus que juste notre activisme. Mais également pour toutes les personnes qui sont victimes de racisme, que, comme les autres panélistes l'ont dit, il y a des ressources, il y a des communautés, il y a des espaces où vous pouvez être vous-même, il y a des gens qui sont prêts à vous accueillir, qu'il y a une énorme force derrière la communauté et qu'on est réellement là pour tous se supporter.
Well said.
Thank you so much, Zahra. Really good point. And it makes me think of Malcolm X when he was mentioning how this is not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. And so it shouldn't be in every single conversation having to advocate for your right to be human and be considered equal. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to introduce Flora. So as it has been mentioned earlier, there will be a small giveaway. And so we wanted to introduce an artist that created the piece that will be given away. And so Flora is a 20-year-old artist from Toronto, currently studying film production with a minor in human rights in Chochake, Montreal. They are a director, writer, visual artist, and overall a creator who is passionate about sharing their life experiences in whichever medium necessary in order to be heard. Their goal is to inspire hope within people while dreaming that the world is capable of being a better place. They were responsible for representing youth audiences in the TIFF Next Wave Youth Committee in 2018 and 19, as well as representing BIPOC voices in Concordia's 2020-2021 Film Production Students for Inclusivity and Action. They were published in Beach Metro and have been highlighted in news articles from the Toronto Star, CTV News, CBC, City News. They have ambitious goals, which include exploring and vocalizing their individuality through the arts. Thank you so much, Flora, for being here.
Thank you. I forgot I wrote all that.
You did a lot. You did quite a lot, and we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's so nice like being amongst an amazing group of panelists. Like I was listening to you guys and you said such amazing, like thoughtful, wise things. Like I really loved listening. So thank you for that introduction and for the whole panel. It was amazing. Yeah, hi, I'm Flora. I'm an artist. I do a lot of things. I love doing things, but I mainly consider myself a creative because I really like to create. And whenever I feel like I just have something that I need to say, and I have something that I think people need to hear, I just kind of choose whatever medium I think could best say that thing and best tell that story and share that message, whether that be through painting, drawing, writing, or film. But yeah, I'm currently studying film production with a minor in human rights, and these are things that I've always really loved and been passionate about. Um, and a lot of what I do, I would say, blends these two things. Since a lot of my art is very political, whether in a direct way or an indirect way. Sometimes what I create makes an explicit comment on society, or sometimes it's kind of a reflection of how I exist in the world as a young, Black, queer, immigrant, trans, non-binary young person. So yeah, and I'm just gonna like talk a bit about myself and like what I'm doing right now. um, yeah, I like to. I forget. I don't know if I mentioned this. I like to paint. I like to draw, and I really love film. And I'm just like a hugely passionate person. Um, And I'm currently working on a film project that I've been working on since September, roughly. And I'm about to shoot it in a few months. And I feel like this film project really connects to what a lot of what was said in the panel. So the film is called Don't Forget the Cotton, with like brackets around the T's in cotton. And it's about two young Black high school students who have completely opposite and contradicting experiences, opinions, and beliefs. And they don't really see eye to eye on a lot of different things. And so these two students were given the project to create a presentation for the Black History Month Assembly. Um, and while creating this presentation, they get into a lot of different conversations and sometimes arguments. Sometimes these conversations turn into arguments about pretty sensitive and complicated subject matter. And so my film is really about this conversation between these two. And um, For me, this film is in a lot of ways a reaction to the 2020 protests that happened and a lot of the conversations that happened surrounding and around that time within the Black community. And I really feel like a lot of the time in the media, whenever we're told or whenever we see stories about Black people, about these topics, about racism, somehow it always involves white people and whiteness. And I find that just when we're talking about these issues, it's also really important to just look at it as how Black people in the community view them and how they talk about them within our own community. Because, of course, like what was said earlier, Black people are not a monolith. Like, there are so many different types of Black people and so many different Black experiences. And so my film, it brings two different Black people who are very different and puts them together and sees what happens when they have a conversation about these topics and how that goes. And what I was saying before, like I'm a very passionate person and I know what it's like to be really passionate about a certain topic and already have an opinion and go into a conversation with somebody who has an opposite opinion. And it's really easy to just be so stuck in your own opinion that you're not really there to understand what the other person thinks. And you're really just trying to get your own message across. But I think, especially when talking about like sensitive subjects within our own community, it's really important to extend understanding because that's the only way that you're going to get anywhere. And of course, when you're talking with people in your own community, like you guys, as much as you might be different, you're also living a Black experience. And that's really what my film is about. And yeah, it's like a dramatic, like horror, but also like kind of comedy because it's like absurd that they're like together and like talking about this. And also what was mentioned in the panel about we can't get free until everyone's free. I think sentiments like that really echo in this film as well, because we need to really remember that, especially in the Black community, like we're all on the same team and we need to raise the consciousness of everyone in our community so that we can all move forward because, you know, none of us are free unless all of us are free. And yeah, I just think conversations like that, like this, especially in art and media, are really important to have. And so I really wanted to tell this story. And the story is also really inspired by a lot of conversations that I've had with Black people and non-Black people about sensitive topics and disagreements and arguments. And so that's what my film is about. Don't forget the cotton. And I'm currently crowdfunding for this film. So I have a GoFundMe up and it's on my website. So if you would like to learn more about this film or donate to my GoFundMe to help fund this film, you can go to my website, which is just my name, my first name and last name.com, floranwakobi.com, FLORANWAKOBI.com. And yeah, I'm really excited for this project and I really hope that everyone can see it very soon. So if you want to hear more about it, you can go to my website. And also on my website, you can see some of the art that I've made in the past few years and some of the articles that I've written and the articles that I've been featured on. And yeah, that's what I'm doing right now as a 20-year-old artist. And I am just really excited to like grow as an artist. I feel like there's still so much for me to learn and experience, and art is really it's really connected to healing for me. A lot of my art is how I heal, and I take my experiences and they kind of manifest, sometimes unknowingly and sometimes purposefully, into what I create. And I think art can be just such a healing medium for anyone, even if like you don't have to be amazing, you don't have to like make a profit out of it. It can just be something that you do for yourself, and as long as you're happy with it, then it's important and it matters. And so yeah, I just really love art and all different forms of it. um, yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Flora, for your amazing work. And as you said, I think art is a good way to heal, not just for the person who's doing the art, but also us who are perceiving it and supporting it. Like I am terrible at art, but I love watching talented people do such amazing projects like that. Also, a side note, I did not know you went to Concordia, but I go to the same university, so I hope Marwa and I will be able to support you in the work that you're doing and watching the movie when it is being released. Everyone, again, don't forget to go and look at their website and support them if you can. If you can, sorry. And with that, I think I just want to thank everyone, every single panelist, for being there, for bringing amazing input into this conversation. I feel energized, healed. I feel like it was really isolating having conversations about that, but I feel more empowered now, and I hope it is the same for the attendees. A lot of them shared positive comments about the learnings that they've made during this discussion. And so, with that, thank you everyone, and have an amazing evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.